Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and I just finished a pattern for an orangutan mask. And in this video, I'm going to show you how I finished this one, the one with the flange. There's a special pattern pieces that you can put on it if you want your orangutan mask to have these, or you can leave them off. I did a few weird things with this one. If you would like to see how the pattern pieces go together and how I used some foil just around the flange and a little bit around his lower lip to give him a different expression, you can find those videos right here. You can also find the pattern if you would like to make one yourself. And then in this video, I'm going to show you how I made him, actually I spray painted him, how I put the bumpiness on here using some hot glue. It turned out really good. I'm really excited about that, and I've never done it before. That was really fun. And I also bought a $15 red wig from Amazon.com. I've never done that before either. I'm not entirely sure I did the beard and mustache right, but if you have any better ideas for me, let me know. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you how this guy was done. In the next video, I'll show you how to make it a very different way, without the wig, without the flange, just really simple, kind of a minimalist orangutan. But in this video, we're going to do this one. Let's get started. I just made up some cooked flour and water paste. It's 1 cup of cold water, 2 tablespoons of white flour. Mix it up really good, and then put it on the stove and bring it to a boil while you're stirring so it doesn't stick to the bottom of your pan, and then let it cool. It's really easy and it dries nice and clear. If you want to, you can use paper mache clay on the front, but I would still recommend using the paper strips and paste on the back just because it's more flexible than the paper mache clay. And what I'm actually going to do is just take my mask and my paper into another room and sit and listen to like a Joe Rogan podcast or something while I put all the paper mache on here. I covered the face and the cheek pads with paper mache first, and then I propped it up over a big jug of laundry soap, but I think probably a milk jug would have worked better. I didn't want to add the wet paper mache to the cap portion and then sit it down on the table because it was going to flatten out if I did that. And then I just added the paper mache to the back half too, and I let the whole thing dry. It took quite a while. I left it overnight just to make sure it was completely dry before I went on with something else. And then I did an experiment. This was my first one, actually. I wanted to use 1 ply of paper towels just to give the face a little bit of, skin-like texture. But I don't think it was actually a good idea. I do not recommend you do this. I don't like the way it came out. I usually use the towels to make wrinkles on purpose. In this case, I actually got wrinkles where I didn't want them. And after it was painted, the little tiny dips in the paper towel were almost impossible to see anyway, so the only thing you can see really are the wrinkles. So I don't think it was worth the trouble. It didn't really hurt anything, but I would prefer that I hadn't done it. Let's say it that way. So just skip that part. or do it. Maybe you could do a better job and it would come out better. But I am glad that I got the towels out because they gave me an idea that really worked well for the textured cheek pads. In photos, I can see that there's a whole bunch of little bumps on the pads. It's very highly textured, and they're really quite small. So I didn't know how to really do that. I thought maybe I could find something around the house that had that texture, but I couldn't find anything. And I even ran out to the local store, or just to the grocery store, to see if maybe they had something, but they didn't. But then I thought that maybe I could do it just by making a whole bunch of bumps with hot glue. I've never done anything like that before, but it really worked really well. It took a while to get the hang of it, and I was trying to make it pretty random, which is almost impossible because you always want, we just have a tendency to make patterns whether we want them or not. But I think it did come out pretty nice. And after the glue was cool, then I just used that 1 ply of paper towels and my paste to cover up the bumps to make sure that the paint would stick really well. I used a brush just to poke the paper down really deep into the crevices. And then, when it was almost completely covered up, I noticed that the orangutan in the photo that I was using for a model had really deep vertical crevices in those big bumps where the two sides of the cheek pads come together right at the top. And I thought it was kind of silly to go to all the trouble to make all those little bumps everywhere else and then not put them in that one spot. So I added some more glue, made it just in a slightly different configuration than the bumps everywhere else. And I let those cool, and then I finished covering everything with the paper towels and let them dry. After that, I took them outside and I sprayed everything with this charcoal spray paint. I like the color, but it's kind of lifeless. I had to do some more things to actually make it look a little bit better. I do like the color as a base coat though. When I was waiting for the spray paint to dry, I went ahead and put together another orangutan, but as a wall mask, and this one doesn't have the cheek flanges. I'm going to show you that in my next video because I just thought it'd be nice to be able to see how the two versions, both with and without the pads, would look. And I'm also going to be painting it and adding fur in a completely different way too, just so we can have some variation to see how we would really like to do it. So be sure to watch the next video too, and then you can decide how you want to finish your mask and whether you want them with or without cheek pads. Now you're going to be seeing that version in the background here in this video, and I did spray it with charcoal paint, but in the end I changed my mind about that and I added another layer of brown paper instead, just so I could see what it would look like if we finished it in a different way. So look for that. It's going to be in another video. Just because I wasn't all that excited about the matte gray being the only color on there, I mixed up some black and yellow acrylic paint and added some white. Just I wanted a warm, lighter gray to go over the dark one. And so I brushed that on. I wiped most of it off with a paper towel. I thought it would make the skin color a little bit more interesting, but I did add some more color towards the end of this process too, because it just wasn't enough. Then I started playing around with that, the $15 wig I bought. It is the right color, but it's not quite the right texture for an orangutan, and, well, to be honest, it was kind of a silly idea, but I just thought it would be a lot of fun to play with. I've never done anything like this before, and I just thought it'd be fun. I couldn't use the whole wig. It was too small to go over the cap anyway, because the cap has to fit over your head, and so it's actually bigger than a human head. So the wig didn't fit, but I needed parts of it for the mustache and beard anyway. So I cut a large portion of it off and stuck that onto the top of his head, behind the cheek pads at the top, and I just used hot glue to put them on there. I actually took it back off again. I'll tell you about that later. I did cut some of it shorter right towards the front because it just kind of hangs over the pad right between where they come together in most of the photographs. So it's quite short in that area. And then it gets kind of longer towards the back of his head, and it's really long on his shoulders. So if I was going to make a really fancy costume for an orangutan and I wanted to use a wig, I'd probably get two of them, assuming I wanted to spend that much money. And I would just cut one of them in half and use it on my shoulders because their shoulder fur is really long. That would look really cool. Now, I cut shorter pieces of the mask for the fur around his muzzle, but it was really tricky. The wig's backing shows. And I didn't like that, so I tried to add some loose hairs over the edges. It still wasn't perfect, and it took a long time. So if you know of a better way to do that, please let us know. I think maybe, I don't know. I just don't know how to do it with the wig. I'm going to do it a different way, not using a wig when I do the next orangutan, and that's going to be, like I said, in the next video. I haven't done it yet, so I don't know how that's going to look, but I am going to do it in a different way. But I was having a problem with the hair and the face because they just didn't seem to go together. The mustache especially needed some major reshaping. That wasn't right. The cheek pads are still kind of boring even with all those bumps because it still looks like it's all one color even though I added a lighter gray over it. It just wasn't doing it for me. So I took the wig off and I took it back out to the garage and I lightly sprayed it with the charcoal paint. I just wanted to have enough on there in a couple of places to give the hairs a little bit of variation. Fur is never all one color, so it just didn't look quite real to me, and it didn't match his face at all. So, but I didn't want very much because I still wanted it to be red. The black that I added for the hair on his head, it's pretty subtle, but it does help to make the red hair look more like it belongs to a gray ape. I found some tan craft paint on my shelf, and I used my grainer brush to add short strokes of fur over the bumps on his cheek pads. You know, in the photographs, they seem to have some really light, very short hairs that are kind of coming out of those pads. And because of that, because of those tiny hairs over the gray, it makes a really interesting color variation. I think that's what it is because you never get a photograph that's close enough to really know what's happening on their faces, but I think that's it. And so I tried it just very lightly hitting the tops of the bumps with this brush that makes fur marks. And I do think that it looks pretty nice. It made the pads look much more interesting and it really kind of pulled things together. And then I used the same light tan over the mustache and beard, but again, just enough to give a little bit of variation in the fur. If you look at a bunch of photographs of male orangutans, some of them have really white fur right next to the skin, you know, right around his muzzle. And then it gets more red the further it gets from the face. And I assume that's because they're older males who live in zoos and they're just growing out white fur like we do. I'm not sure that's what it is, but it does look really cool. So you might want to look at some photographs just to see if you'd like to make the beard on your mask look like that. It's really striking. I figured he was almost done, so I took him back out to the garage and I put on a glove so I could hold his hair up while I sprayed it with a clear varnish. I'm using it as hairspray, but not to make it look nicer. I wanted it to mess it up so that it kind of stands up from the head in a really unorganized way because orangutans don't brush their hair, and I just thought it would look more, I just thought it would be fun. So he's all done now, and I haven't actually tried him on yet. I gotta try that. Whoops. This is gonna be interesting. Lots of hair. Huh. Oh, it fits really comfortably. I don't have any straps on it or anything, but it's just sitting right where it belongs, so I don't think I'm going to use any straps. If you do need some, of course, you could just put some, if I can get the hair out of the way, you just put some holes right behind the flange, and then you could tie it under your chin, but boy, it feels really nice. I'm real happy with him. Now, like I said, if you would like to see the video showing you how to put all the pattern pieces together, how to fill out some of the forms with some foil, you can find those videos and the pattern itself right there. Now, in the next one, I will show you how I finished this one. He's a minimalist orangutan. It took a whole lot less time to put this one together, and it didn't cost anywhere near as much money. And I'll go ahead and put a link to that right down below so you can watch it. And in the meantime, come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.